Hello everybody, how you doing? This is Fadali and this video is about the style guide and the coding conventions in HTML. Okay, this video is really going to help you in writing a better and well structured code. Alright, so let's just see how we do that. First of all, always declare the document type. Whenever you are writing a HTML document, always declare the document type. You can write the HTML5 without this thing, but it is always recommended to use the document type. It helps the browser to understand that this is an HTML document. Second one, always use the element names in a lowercase. Okay, we have the bad example and a good example, so always prefer to use the lowercase element names. And the third thing, close all HTML elements. Okay, you can also write the code without the closing element, such as in this example. In a bad example, we use the paragraph, but we haven't written the ending tag of the paragraph, and it will work, but it is recommended to close all the HTML elements. Okay, you can see in a good example, we have closed the paragraph element. Alright. Okay, the fourth one, for the elements name and as well as the attributes name, always use the lowercase. It won't affect the code, but using the lowercase in attributes name is kind of a good practice. Always quote the attribute values. Whenever you use the attribute, you also give it a value. Okay, and in values sometimes we don't quote the attribute values. Okay, just as in a bad example, if we use the spacing without the quote, so this line is not valid. Always quote the attribute values. You can look at the good example. And okay, in the sixth one, always specify the alt width and the height for the images. Okay, and space in the equal signs. Okay, look at the bad example and look at the good example. After the link and after the rel, you would be seeing the space and equal sign and space again, then the value. And you can see in the good example that you don't see that spacing after the rel and in between the equal sign. So avoid the long code lines. And the ninth one is blank lines and the indentions. Okay, so I will be explaining you both of these points in the editor. Alright, so let's just go to the editor and see how it works. First of all, we will cover the blank space and indentation. Okay, what is indentation? Indentation is simply spacing. Alright, I have written the two same code but on the two different files. But you can see here that the file one has a proper spacing, which we call the indentation, and the blank space, but the file 2 does not have that spacing. Okay, so how the indentation and the blank space is kind of useful in this scenario. Okay, first of all, it really won't affect your code if you use the indentation or the blank spaces, but it really helps you to clean your code and make a good structure of your code. Now you can see in the first example you have the kind of good structure, and this example is easy to read. Okay, because you have a proper spacing. Alright, you can see that. And on the other hand, we have the same code, but it is not kind of that clean. It is kind of bit hard to read your code. Proper use of the white blanks and the indentation increase the readability of your code. Other point was avoid the long code. Okay, if you have a kind of code like a long code like this, in which you have to scroll left and right to read the code, so in such scenario, all you need to do is to give spacing to your code to make it more short and easy to read. Okay, if you have a long line code, okay, in which you have to scroll left and right, so just press the enter and break your code into the many lines. Okay, so that makes your code easy to read and increase the productivity. Okay, so we are done with the 8th point and the 9th point. So let's just go for the 10th one. Never skip the title element. Okay, this is an important because the title element is used by the search engine algorithm to decide the order when listing the pages in the search results. So always use a proper title for your topic. The 11th point is, by omitting the HTML and the body tag from your HTML file, will your HTML code work? Yes, it will work, but it can cause you the errors and the crashes. And we have another question, that omitting head. What will happen if we omit the head tag? Okay, it won't create any trouble because by default, if you don't use the head element, browser will add all the elements which comes before the body to the default head element. Close the empty HTML elements. Okay, in empty HTML element we don't have the closing tag, we only have the starting tag. Alright, so you can see that both of these lines are valid. Alright, okay, add a lang attribute. It is kind of recommended to use the lang attribute in your HTML file because it tells the browser about the language of your web page. Okay, it is also kind of useful for the search engines. Alright, so you can see the example of lang attribute. Okay, always use the metadata and the lang attribute, alright, because it ensures the proper interpretation of your code and as well as correct search and indexing. Alright, always use the Viewport because as you know that as we all know that the websites, okay, can be viewed on the device of any size. So setting the Viewport makes your website responsive. It adjusts the size of your website according to the size of the device. So, and what is the viewport? Windows size of the browser is the viewport. It's called viewport. HTML comments, we will prefer everyone to use the HTML comment whenever they are making any project. So because it will really help you to understand your own code, and even if you are sharing your code with any other developer, it will really help him to understand the code. So always recommended to use the HTML comments. Lowercase file names. Okay, whenever you're trying to access any file, in this scenario we are trying to access image file, so always use the lowercase file names because there are the some servers that are cache sensitive and there are the some servers that are not cache sensitive. Alright, so make sure that you don't use the uppercase file names. HTML file use .html extension and CSS file use .css extension, and the JavaScript file use .js extension. Okay, and last we have what is the difference between the HTML extension and HTML extension. Okay, there is no difference between them. You can use both of these, the extensions for the HTML file, because both extensions will be treated as a HTML file for any browser or any web server. Alright, so this is all for this video. If you really find this video useful, hit the like button and subscribe the channel, and bye bye.